World Religions Explained full series, family tree reaction, detailed brief breakdown of Hinduism and Buddhism and every other religion, but mostly Hinduism and Buddhism. Hi, my name is Christbearer Guru Pastor. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe to my channel and watch my videos and subscribe to my channel. So I can make better religious aspect videos, geography, street food vlog, and so I can make better religious aspect videos, geography, street food vlog, and So I can make better religious aspect videos, geography, street food vlog, and Christian preaching videos. Today we'll be reacting to Matt Baker, Useful Charts, World Religions Explained full series, family tree, Matt Baker Useful Charts reaction, and detailed brief breakdown of Hinduism and Buddhism religious aspect video. I like Matt Baker Useful Charts because he is a Jewish secularist. Known as a secularist, and Christian secularist, known as a secularist. He inspires me a lot. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, watch. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, subscribe. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe to my channel, watch my videos, subscribe to my channel. Hinduism is an umbrella term for a broad range of Indian religions and traditions unified by the concept of Dharma, Hindu Dharma, a universal order maintained by its followers through rituals and righteous living. The word Hindu is an exonym, and while Hinduism has been called the oldest religion in the world, the oldest religion in the world, that's true, oldest religion in the world, which is what research says. It has also been described as Sanatana Dharma, literally eternal Dharma, a modern usage based on the belief that its origins lie beyond human history, as referred in the Hindu texts. Another endonym for Hinduism, Vedika Dharma, literally Vedic Dharma. The major Hindu denominations are Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, which is going to tell us about Shaktism, and the Smarta tradition known as Smartism. As research says, there are many more than these, and many more gods than this. True. Many more gods than this. The six Astika schools of Hindu philosophy, which recognize the authority of the Vedas, are Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. There are many more than these. Hinduism entails diverse systems of thought marked by a range of shared concepts that discuss theology, mythology, among other topics. In textual sources, Hindu texts have been classified into Shruti, heard, and Smriti, remembered. According to research, the major Hindu scriptures are the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, including the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and the Agamas. According to research, prominent themes in Hindu beliefs include karma, auction, intent is true. Action, intent and consequences, and the four purusarthas, goals or aims of human life, namely dharma, ethics, duties, artha, prosperity, work, karma, desires, passions, and moksha, liberation, freedom from the passions and cycle of death and rebirth, which is going to talk about death and rebirth, which is what research says. Hindu religious practices include devotion, bhakti, worship, puja, sacrificial rites, yajna, and meditation, dhyana, and yoga. Research says this. While the traditional Itihasa Purana and its derived epic Puranic chronology present Hinduism as a tradition existing for thousands of years, scholars regard Hinduism as a fusion or synthesis of Brahmanical, that's true, orthopraxy with various Indian cultures having diverse roots and no specific founder. According to research, this Hindu synthesis emerged after the Vedic period between circa 500 to 200 BC and circa 300 CE. 300 CE. There's a lot of gods. 300 CE. In the period of the second urbanization and the early classical period of Hinduism, when the epics and the first Puranas were composed, that is Hinduism, flourished in the medieval period with the decline of Buddhism in India. And since the 19th century, modern Hinduism, that is Hinduism influenced by Western culture, has acquired a great appeal in the West, most notably reflected in the they are atheists too. Most notably, this is what research says. Most notably reflected in the reflected in the popularization of yoga and various sects, such as transcendental meditation and Hare Krishna and transcendental meditation and the Hare Krishna movement. Hinduism is the world's third largest religion, with approximately 1.2 billion followers, or around 15% of their global population known as Hindus. According to research, it is the most widely professed faith in India, Nepal, Mauritius, and in Bali, Indonesia. According to research, significant numbers of Hindu communities communities are found in countries of South Asia, in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean, in places like Suriname and Guyana. Research says this. Middle East, North America, in places like Canada and America, that is USA. According to research, Europe, Oceania, in places like Fiji and Australia. According to research, Africa, in places like Kenya, according to research, and other regions in the world as well, if you can find it. The word Hindu is an exonym and is derived from the Sanskrit root Sindhu, believed to be the name of the Indus River in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. The Proto-Iranian sound change occurred between 850 and 600 BCE. According to Gavin Flood, who is a historian, the actual term Hindu first occurs as a Persian geographical term for the people who lived beyond the river Indus. Sanskrit Sindhu, more specifically in the 6th century BCE. According to research, inscription of Darius of Persia, the Great, 550 to 486 BCE. The term Hindu in these ancient records is a geographical term and did not refer to a religion. The word Hindu is found as Hepta-Hindu in Avesta, equivalent to Rig-Vedic Sapta-Sindhu. Well, pronounced Hindustan, is found in a Sasanian inscription from the 3rd century CE. Exactly. Many scriptures. Yeah. Saraswati pairs with Brahma. Lakshmi pairs with Vishnu. And Parvati pairs with Shiva. From the 3rd century CE. Both of which refer to parts of North, West and South Asia. In Arabic text, Al-Hind referred to the land beyond the Indus, and therefore all the people in that land were Hindus. This Arabic term was itself taken from the pre-Islamic Persian term Hindu. By the 13th century, Hindustan emerged as a popular alternative name of India, meaning the land of Hindus. Research says this. Among the earliest known records of Hindu with connotations of religion may be in the 7th century Chinese text record of the western regions by Xuanzang, and 14th century Persian text Futus Salatin by Abd al-Malik Isami. Some 16th to 18th century Bengali Gaudiya Vaishnava texts. Mahabharata is one of the scriptures in the Puranas too, yeah. Oh, that's correct. Nothing to say about that. Royal dynasties too. Yet Gaudiya Vaishnava texts mention Hindu and Hindu Dharma to distinguish from Muslims without positively defining these terms. According to research, in the 18th century, the European merchants and colonists began to refer to the followers of the European merchants and colonists. In the 18th century, the European merchants and colonists began to refer to the followers of Indian religions collectively as Hindus. The use of the English term Hinduism to describe a collection of practices and beliefs is a fairly recent construction. The term Hinduism was first used by The term Hinduism was first used by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1816-17. By the 1840s, the term Hinduism was used by those Indians who opposed British colonialism and who wanted to distinguish themselves from Muslims and Christians. Before the British began to categorize communities strictly by religion, Indians generally did not define themselves. It does too. Themselves exclusively through their beliefs. Exclusively through their religious beliefs. Instead, identities were largely segmented on the basis of locality, language, varna, jati, occupation, and sect. According to research, Hinduism is an umbrella term referring to a broad range of sometimes opposite and often competitive traditions. The term Hinduism was coined in Western ethnography in the 18th century and refers to the fusion or synthesis of various Indian cultures and traditions with diverse roots and no founder. Research says this. This Hindu synthesis emerged after the Vedic period between circa 500 to 200 BCE and circa 300 CE. In the period of the second urbanization and the early classical period of Hinduism, when the epics and first Puranas were written. Period of Hinduism, when the epics and the first Puranas were composed. If Puranas were composed, that is, Hinduism, flourished in the medieval period with the decline of Buddhism in India. Hinduism's variations in belief and its broad range of traditions make it difficult to define as a religion. According to traditional Western conceptions, research says this Hinduism includes a diversity of ideas on spirituality and traditions. I know you don't. Hindus can be polytheistic, which means worship a lot of gods, which is what he just talked about before. They worship a lot of gods, and worship a lot of gods. Basically, there are 3,000 gods in Hinduism. Pantheistic, pantheistic, pandeistic, henotheistic. Basically, worshipping one god without and acknowledging the existence of lesser gods as supreme. Lesser gods. Monotheistic, worshipping one god. Monistic, agnostic, atheistic, worshipping no god, thinking God isn't real. And humanist, basically taking a philosophical side of Hinduism. According to Mahatma Gandhi, a man may not believe in God and still call himself a Hindu. According to Wendy Donesia, ideas about all the major issues of faith and life, the Indravaruni Agni, lifestyle, vegetarianism, non-violence, belief in rebirth, even caste, are subjects of debate, not dogma, because of the wide range of traditions and ideas covered by the term Hinduism. Did too. The Bible says that. It's not as simple. True. They change over time. For Hinduism it is. Which is in Pakistan. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description and a link to his video, the original video in the description. So you can watch it without my commentary. Exactly. Brahman is a Shramana movement. Hindu synthesis. To 500 C. 500 to 200 BC and 300, circa 300 C. True. Astika and Nastika. Schools are Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. And that's pretty much correct. Vedas. Heterodox. Buddhism is It's not a bunch of exercises. They do too. That's what I was reading. Liberation. What's it mean more than that? What are these four paths? That's rubbish. That's wrong. It's more than this. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I won't correct him. I do. I respect him still. It's wrong, but I still respect him. I won't get angry with him. My should be correct. Should not. But I won't. I won't correct. Right, I'll correct. I won't correct. Yeah, he's wrong. There's many more than this, but I won't correct him. I stand correct. I won't correct him. I respect him too much. I respect him. In the Rig Veda. Exactly. Exactly. Vasudeva Krishna. True. God is called Elohim and Yahweh. Yahweh is God in the Bible. It's the God of the Bible. It's real. That's what it calls God. Shabbos definitely worship Shiva. They worship all the gods correctly, so that's wrong. But I won't. I'll correct him, but I won't correct him. Respect him. I respect him. Inspires me a lot. I respect him. You have more humility towards him. lingam, yeah, that's true. Almost done this one. There's more than this, but I won't worry about it. True. All of them are worshipped equally. After the Vedas. It is too. That's what research says. I like how where he's going with this. Like in the Caribbean, places like Suriname and Guyana. You do that. Up to the other side. He was a guru. Hare Krishna. Maybe. Gaudiya Vaishnava. Gaudiya Vaishnava. Yeah, he was a very bad man. He made genderist comments and stuff. It's very bad. Now it's Buddhism. Let's get into it, shall we? So let's start with the Vedic religion, which I introduced in my Hinduism, which is the Hindu one. Around 1500 BC, after the Europeans slowly migrated into the area, probably to mingling with the descendants of the Indus Valley civilization, as well as with other Indians living along the Ganges River. The Vedic religion likely grew up from all three of these groups. Exactly. Buddhism was founded in Nepal. Buddha was born in Nepal, and Buddhism was founded in Nepal. The founder of Buddhism was Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, who was founded in Nepal. Kshatriya, yeah. The Vaishya. The Shubra. Shravana. This is a map of India around 500 BC, including the kingdom of Kuru, where Hinduism was. Kuru. Baba. Sure. Synthesis. Very true. And Nastika. The Vedas. Part of Hinduism. Who? Reject the Vedas. Sure. Buddhism and Jainism. Jainism, Buddhism. Beyond Buddhism. That's known as the Buddha. He is a family. Shakyamuni. Exactly. They know that about his. They know that about him. Show that about him. But it died at the age of 80. True. He was too. The research says that. First Buddhist schism. Mahasangika. Svetavira. Sea monks, yeah. Mahayana. Explain it a bit. It's so divided, isn't it? Because it's what religion is. It's always divided. True. He did too. Vajivada, Savasivada Pagalavada.
The most important of these missions was led by his first son, Mahinda, who became a monk and brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka. Now, I should point out that one does not need to become a monk to follow Buddhism, although some still do, as it is generally seen as being a faster way to reach enlightenment.
Sure enough.
In Sri Lanka,
You don't have to become a monk to become a Buddhist.
became known as the
You don't have to become a monk to become a Buddhist. Don't have to become a monk to follow Buddhism.
Was produced, which today is the oldest surviving complete set of Buddhist scriptures. Take note that Pali is a language closely
Sanskrit.
not quite the same as Sanskrit.
It's closely related to it.
The contents of the Pali canon. A full set of Buddhist scriptures is called a Tripitaka, which means three baskets. That's because it's comprised of three main parts. The Vinaya Pitaka, which contains the community rules, the Sutra Pitaka, which contains the Buddha's teachings, and the Abhidhamma, which contains analysis of Buddha's teachings. The Vinaya Pitaka contains rules for both male monks, who are called bhikkhus, as well as for female monks or nuns, who are called kutis.
Exactly.
It also contains a few sections covering early Buddhist history. In the Pali Canon,
So early Buddhist history.
is divided into five parts,
Nikayas.
These can then be broken further into smaller books. Of these smaller books, the one that I'd like to
The Dhammapada,
which is located in
Fifth Nikaya.
it's the most
Sure.
well known of all the Buddhist scriptures.
Do you know that about the Buddhist scriptures?
For those who want to
Learning from this guy.
Finally, I'd like to point out that the Pali Canon version of the Abhidhamma has 7 columns. Okay, let's now go back to the family tree chart. From Sri Lanka, Buddhism eventually spread to Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. The type of
So I
Buddhism
go
found
to
in all of these countries is therefore very
Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia.
Take note that the word
Is where Buddhism is. Buddhism is in. Buddhism is today. Buddhism is China, Japan, Korea, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, Myanmar, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Japan, Korea, Central Asia, Tibet, Bhutan.
It is often said that there are really just 2 main types of Buddhism. There are Theravada and Mahayana. I'm therefore going to focus on Mahayana next.
That's good of you.
The exact origins of Mahayana are unclear. It wasn't really a separate school, but rather a movement that took place within many schools. One theory is that it developed out of the now extinct Samkhya school, but another is that it might have originated among lay people. Whatever the origin, the common factor among Mahayana Buddhists is that they have an additional set of scriptures known as the Mahayana Sutras. According to Mahayana Buddhism, these special sutras were initially instead only to be later when the time was right. One of the earliest schools to accept the Mahayana Sutras was the Dharma-Pitaka school, which was originally centered in Gandhara, today Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is why there were, until very recently, some very old Buddhist statues.
In the Gandhara region, which is Pakistan and Afghanistan today, it's where the Dhamma school comes from, of Buddhism. Vada school.
Or whether it came out of
Vada school.
I therefore showed a quote from the Gandhara region, the Dharma
Pakistan and Afghanistan, yep.
China, Korea, Japan, and
It's also where Buddhism
there
is.
were other schools that spread to these
China, Japan, South Korea,
and therefore today, all
that.
these ancient Mahayana monks follow the Dharmakataka community rules. Strangely, although Buddhism originated in India and was once a dominant force, today
True, it did originate in India. It originated in Nepal.
in fact, it is
Sure.
China that has the most amount of Buddhists. I therefore want to talk a bit
I'm not going to get angry in my perspective.
alternative to the polycanon. Like the polycanon, it too contains a Tripitaka. However, take note that the sections covering the teachings of the Buddha are called agamas instead of kayas. The Chinese canon has only 4 agamas, which roughly correspond to the first 4 kayas from the polycanon. The Vinaya and Abhidhamma sections, however, are totally different. Whereas the Pali canon includes the Theravada community rules, the Chinese canon includes the Dharmakataka rules, as well as rules from several now extinct schools. However, the main difference between the Pali canon and the Chinese canon is that the Chinese canon includes several additional sections, most notably the Mahayana sutras, which I mentioned earlier. There are many of these.
Mahayana Sutras too,
Lotus Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra,
which are
the Flower Garden,
very interesting.
and Nirvana Sutra. But that is
Nirvana,
not all.
basically achieving
The
Nirvana.
Chinese canon also
Reminds me of an artist,
includes
which is a band named Nirvana, which is having relation to Buddhism.
secret practices meant
Tantra,
only for those with specialized knowledge.
specialized knowledge.
Now, as you might have
Yeah.
guessed, the Chinese canon is mostly written in Chinese, classical Chinese to be exact. Although the Japanese version does include some parts in Japanese. This is why the Pali canon is generally understood to be the old of the 2 canons. After all, Pali is an ancient Indian language. India is where it originated.
Yeah.
However, this paints a bit of a wrong picture. It's actually more accurate to say that the Pali canon is the oldest complete version of the Buddhist scriptures.
The oldest complete version, exactly.
Works of the Chinese canon
Does play the wrong picture.
have the corresponding older Sanskrit versions. It's just that we don't have the complete Chinese canon. Okay, now before I move on, I want to briefly describe the main difference between Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism in terms of beliefs. In both cases, the ultimate goal is to achieve enlightenment, which then frees a person from the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Which, by the way, is
Same goal in Hinduism. I read that there.
Theravada
Yeah.
Buddhists teach that there are 3 paths to enlightenment. First, and by far the most common path, is the student path.
Student path, yeah.
The person learns from the teachings of the Buddha and eventually becomes an arhat, mostly by means of strict discipline. Once a person becomes an arhat, they no longer do evil. The second path is that of the solitary path, in which a person achieves enlightenment on their own, but is unable to teach others how to do it. Finally, there is the full Buddha path, in which a person achieves enlightenment on their own and is also able to teach
Others how to do it.
This
Yeah.
obviously was the path taken by
Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of Buddhism.
It's called Buddha.
He's known as the Buddha, yeah.
Now, what a lot of non-Buddhists don't know is that Buddha was not the only person to achieve Buddhahood. The Pali Canon mentions 27 Buddhas by name, Buddhas who lived before the Buddha. The 3 most recent being Kakusanda, Kunagumana, and Kasama. It also talks about a future Buddha named Maitreya, which brings me to the word bodhisattva, which is a term that is used to refer to someone on the path towards becoming a Buddha. In Theravada Buddhism, bodhisattvas are thought to be rare, with Maitreya being the only current one. Like I say, in
Maitreya.
Theravada Buddhism, most people take the arhat path. And this is where Mahayana Buddhism is very different. In Mahayana Buddhism, the first 2 paths are
Exactly.
very much inferior. This is why Mahayana Buddhists refer to Theravada as Hinayana, which means the lesser path. In contrast, the word Mahayana means the greater path. Mahayana teaches that the full Buddha path, also known as the Bodhisattva path, is open to everyone.
True.
It sees the
Bodhisattva path is open to everyone.
individuals.
And the others, Hinayana.
For the sake of helping others. Therefore, in Hinayana Buddhism, there are lots
So Bodhisattvas.
many of whom are understood to reside in higher realms. So Mahayana Buddhists often
pray to bodhisattvas.
and ask them for help.
They do. It's like they're worshipping idols.
Often called laughing Buddha.
Loving Buddha, fat Buddha.
His actually Buddha.
His name's Buddha.
He was a monk who lived around 1,000 years ago.
Monk who lived around 1,000 years. It's very interesting.
And Buddha are not the same person.
They're not the same person. Two different names, two different people.
Buddhism, who
So have to go to the founder with.
years ago. In contrast, Buddha is a bodhisattva on his way to becoming a Buddha. Some think that he is Maitreya, that future Buddha that I mentioned earlier. All of this brings up the question: are there
Gods in Buddhism?
Well, it kind of depends on your
There probably are gods, but you probably aren't gods.
Buddhism is often said to be atheist.
Yeah, that's what people say. It's what research says is atheistic religion.
Certainly seems to be something a little bit similar to it. Maybe not the omnipotent sort of God that Abrahamic religions
Talk about
some sort of
spiritual thing.
Sure. In Theravada
But
Buddhism,
there is gods in there as well.
for example, you might see a Theravada
Which reminds me what I learned.
in this case,
Which reminds me people pray in front of a Buddha statue of Buddha and ask for marriage. I learned this from somewhere. And ask for marriage and kids, and Buddha never married and had kids, and the monks never married and had kids. Yet they prayed in front of Buddha. They prayed in front of a Buddha statue, and yeah, they prayed in front of a Buddha statue of Buddha, asked for marriage and kids when Buddha didn't marry and have kids, and the monks didn't marry and have kids. It's very problematic. Just learned that from research and many other things as well.
Is the one formed by Buddha.
Amitabha.
Finally, there's Tiantai, known as Tendai in Japan, and Chiantai in Korea. It focuses on the Lotus Sutra that I mentioned earlier.
The lotus.
It says that all paths eventually lead to the final
When Bodhisattva path.
Okay, I now want to turn our attention to Tibetan Buddhism. Back in the early days of Mahayana, there was another movement that was split off, known as Vajrayana. But like Mahayana, this was not a separate school of Buddhism, but rather a movement that impacted several schools. One school that took on Vajrayana ideas was the Sarvastivada school, which was probably a branch similarly named.
Right, so what's about a school?
It eventually spread north to Tibet and Bhutan, which is where
And Bhutan is where Buddhism is.
Tibetan Buddhism differs from other forms of Buddhism in that it incorporates far more esoteric practices, such as chanting, reciting incantations, and making geometric patterns called mandalas to help induce trances. The most famous Tibetan Buddhist is, of course, the Dalai Lama, who seems to be the for the Tibetan people. He is actually the leader of just one sect of Tibetan
Gaelic.
of which there are 4. However, his sect, known as the
Gaelic, yeah, that's cool.
is the largest. He is referred to as the 14th Dalai Lama because the belief is that he is the reincarnation of a man named
Kanadrupa,
who died in
1474,
continues to be reborn
on Earth.
In turn, all of the Dalai Lamas are said to be reincarnations of
Of
Bodhisattva.
oh, the Loki test. Exactly, it's true.
I want to briefly mention
What's wrong with it? I don't respect him well.
It was founded by a man
Mahavira.
as you can see here is an object of Buddha is looking quite similar to Buddha. In fact, the two teachers lived around the same time, with Mahavira being the 2, whereas the Buddha was born in
So, Vera was born in Durji.
One of the key features of the
Jain is non-violence. Exactly. It's one thing about Jains is that they're non-violent.
Jainism is much smaller than Buddhism.
It's much full in Buddhism.
Two main branches.
Leave a link. I'll leave a link.
Which means white flag, because its monks wear white robes. Note the face mask also. Jains have been wearing face masks.
No, leave it. long before the current pandemic. I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
The other branch of Jainism is called R, meaning sky.
Sky.
Very
Very interesting. I didn't know that. I'll leave a link to his video, to the original video in the description so you can watch it without my commentary. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description as well. I like him.
More than one religious tradition. However, there are three traditions that are the most important. These are often referred to as the three teachers. They are Hindu Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. I've
Be
already
quick,
talked about
please.
Buddhism in the Buddhism video, so let me tell you
Exactly.
what you need to do. To do so, let me start with the earliest form of religion to develop in China, polytheism.
Polytheism.
The symbol you see here is from China's oldest writing system called the Oracle script, which was used in Shang text. It's pronounced Shang.
Shangdi.
Basically means
It's highest God.
later.
So China worships idols as well. That's what it says.
Although in other contexts, he is said to manifest himself as five deities, each associated with color, element, direction, and planet. But Changdi was not and is
not the only God.
China's God. There are dozens more, such as
A lot of gods in Chinese movies. Lots.
The queen mother of lettuce, who is associated with death and has the ability to bestow. However, one aspect of Chinese polytheism, which developed early on, is that the worship or veneration of deceased ancestors became just as important, if not more important, than the worship of deities. Another group of spiritual beings called immortals became important as well. Immortals are former humans who are not quite gods, but who live on after death and can possess great powers. Thus, as time went on, self-cultivation in this life became more and more important in Chinese religion. Then, during the 500s BCE, there was an explosion of new ideas.
Exactly. So for which there's only two remaining.
But there are two that have survived all the way to today.
Taoism
I'm sure you guessed, Taoism.
and Confucianism.
Taoism is the more mystical and spiritual of the two. It incorporates all the gods and immortals from Chinese polytheism, but also places a strong emphasis on living in harmony with something called Tao, a word that's kind of hard to define quickly in English. On a basic level, it simply means way, path, but on a deeper level, it refers to the universe's ultimate reality. It is usually associated with the complementary forces yin and yang, which you probably know about because this Confucianism, on the other hand, is more focused on the physical world and
Physical world. Sounds like a philosophy then. It's a philosophy.
Actually, this is why Confucianism is often said to be more of a philosophy than a religion. It's named after who lived around the same time as Buddha.
The Buddha.
Note that Confucius is the anglicized
Third
version
of them called Doozy. Master Kong, yeah.
The traditional founder of Taoism, Lao Tzu, is said to have lived around the same
He was an elder of Confucius, I guess.
His elder is thought to have had some relevance. However, nowadays, Lao Tzu is generally considered to have been more of a legendary figure, whereas Confucius was almost certainly historical. So, like I say, a lot of people in China follow the traditions and principles associated with
Answer the word. It was also in Chinese polytheism, Chinese syncretism.
So it's not uncommon to see depictions of Buddha or various bodhisattvas next to those of traditional Chinese gods or immortals. And on top of all of this, the veneration of ancestors in China is important to this day as well.
It does too.
Now, before we move on, I want to point out some more modern trends within Chinese religion. The first is Chinese salvationist religions, which became popular in the early 20th century, but which nowadays are mostly followed in Taiwan. A good example is the Guanda, which has roots that go back to imperial times, but didn't really take off until after 1912, which is when China became a republic. At this point, it was led by a man named
Zhang Qianran, that's an interesting name. He's a religious leader.
However, once the revolution started and China became communist, it was mostly stamped out, only to gain traction again in Taiwan during the 80s. Like most Chinese salvation movements, Guandao is kind of a simplified version of Chinese Semitism, but packaged in a way that is more similar to, say, Mormonism. In other words,
Packaged in a way similar to Mormonism, yeah. It's what Yu Guandao is.
and there's a lot of emphasis on the need for salvation, for converting others to the movement. Another good example of a Chinese
Wei-Shinism.
religion is the more recent Wei-Shinism, founded by Hu Yuan. And then there's Fallen God, which was founded around the same time
By Li Hongji.
It's actually not classified as a Chinese salvation religion, but shares some similarities with it, although it's more focused on doing special exercises called Qi Gong. It has become particularly popular within the Chinese expat community.
Protesting against China. See?
Okay, let me now explain some important differences between Judaism and Christianity. One of the things that drives Jews crazy is that Christians tend to assume that they already know lots about Judaism because they've read the Old Testament. I've even had many Christians tell me that I'm not a real Jew because I don't match their expectations of what a real Jew is.
I don't know you're a real Jew, I still stand up for you.
Former Christians have
They've only viewed the Old Testament
Christian lens.
through a Christian lens.
That Judaism basically uses the same framework that Christianity
Well, it doesn't.
but that it simply does so
It does it without Jesus, but it doesn't use the same thing. It's not exactly how it works, exactly. The Old Testament Jews were the people of God. They were following the laws of Moses, had all these rabbis, all that stuff.
What should a person believe?
The Pharisees,
Choosing whether or not to join the church, most Christians, especially Protestants, will first of all ask
people of God in the
which is why
Old Testament, the founder was Moses,
always includes a
all that stuff.
statement of faith. It's also
And exactly, Christians do always about what they should believe.
to make a list of what a Christian needs to believe in order to be considered a Christian. And of course, the most important thing that a Christian needs to believe is that Jesus is God and that He died for our sins. For example,
Sure.
today's scripture, John 3:16, says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life." So obviously, belief is a key part of what makes a Christian. But this is not exactly true for Judaism, nor is it exactly true for most other religions. Most religions are more concerned with what should a person do. So, for example, for many modern
Judaism is concerned with what a person should do along with other religions, and Christianity is concerned with what a person should believe. It's true.
So, for example, when I converted
Moses
to
twice.
which in my case was a year-long process,
I get ya. Jewish secularist.
agreed to a certain list of beliefs.
Mm.
Instead, I was taught mostly about Jewish practices and traditions,
Wow.
as a lot
He was too.
and language of the Jewish people. The other thing that Christianity is very much concerned with is salvation. The whole
Exactly.
thing hinges on the question, what must a person do
To be saved.
in order to be saved? So the assumption that most Christians make about Judaism is that Jews are also concerned with salvation.
Which is not true.
That Jews simply have a different way of obtaining it. The further assumption, based mostly on the writings of Paul, is that Jews try to obtain salvation by obeying
Jewish law.
but that's simply not true.
True.
Because there is no such thing as original sin in Judaism. Nor is there much of a focus on the exact details surrounding the afterlife.
Mm.
To put it simply,
True.
Jews do not follow Jewish law in order to be saved from some future punishment or in order to receive some future reward. For some Jews, they follow the law simply because
told them to.
for others, it's because we believe that many of those laws we call mitzvot serve a purpose in Judaism as well. The best way that I can explain this is by giving a home example. In our modern society, we have many traffic laws that are designed to keep everyone safe. If you break one of those laws, say by going too fast in your car, you might get a ticket as punishment. But do you obey the traffic rules simply because you don't want a ticket? Perhaps, but I hope that you also obey them because, for example, you don't want to hit some kid while passing through a school zone. Likewise, one of the Jewish mitzvot is to rest on Shabbat or Sabbath. We do this not because we're scared that God will punish us,
True.
but because we see a benefit in taking some time off at least once per week. Now, as you probably know, different Jews take a different approach to how carefully they follow this mitzvah. And I'll get to that in a moment. But for now, please understand that for all Jews, no matter what denomination they belong to, what they do or don't do is not based on trying to earn a future reward. This is summed up by the following principle given by the early Pharisee Antigonus of
That's so good.
Be not like servants who serve their master for the sake of reward. Rather, be like servants who do not serve their master for the sake of reward, and let the awe of heaven be upon you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Christians are not at all concerned with what they do. Of course they are. But in Christianity, belief always comes first, followed by a changed life. And I'm also not saying that there are absolutely no beliefs in Judaism. For some Jews, their only creed is the Shema prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one.
Exactly, that's one of their beliefs.
There are
Shema prayer. I've heard of that before.
My point, though, is that generally speaking, Christians put a stronger emphasis on believing, and Jews put a
Stronger emphasis on doing.
So with that
Stronger
under
emphasis
our
on
belts,
doing.
let's now look at the family tree. As I mentioned in episode 1 of the Christian denominations,
Which I'm gonna do in a future video.
has experienced an ancient religion, which was practiced by the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Israel and
Ancient
Judah
Israel
are
religion.
relatively small,
Fair enough.
but they happen to be located right in between two of the most
Ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, I guess.
world, Egypt and Mesopotamia, which is why Egypt and then
Or just
later
around
Syria and Babylon played such a huge role in their history. Now, there are two main explanations for where ancient Israelite religion came from. One, of course, is that it came directly from God through divine revelation, specifically when Moses received the Torah.
It says that in the book of Exodus. We see the Torah in Exodus 20, 25.
In fact, the scholarly consensus nowadays is that the Israelites actually started out as a
Subset of Canaan.
Canaanite.
That's what research says.
Polytheism to monotheism over time.
So the scholarly consensus
What we're
is.
concerned with here is what happened during the late Iron Age. Basically, Israel fell to the Assyrians, and Judah fell to the Babylonians. But then, following a brief exile in Babylon, the former inhabitants of Judah, now called Jews, were able to return to their land and rebuild the temple, which is why Judaism between 537 BCE and 70 CE is known as
Second Temple Judaism.
During this time, it was influenced by both Zoroastrianism, which was the religion of the Persians, as well as by Hellenism.
He said that in the beginning. Zoroastrianism and Hellenism.
Judaism was definitely monotheistic, which is to this day its defining feature. However, by the time that the Romans took over, there were four major sects.
True enough. According to the New Testament as well. Pharisees, Essenes, Zealots, and Pharisees. The Pharisees, Essenes, Zealots, and Sadducees. The early Christians.
However, Christianity quickly became a separate, mostly
Gentile religion.
non-Jewish religion.
Non-Jewish, like that's us.
Continued to maintain Jewish
Pyramids.
eventually went extinct.
What do
However,
you see?
evidence that they had an influence on the development of
Islam, which we'll get to.
Anyway, the Essenes, Zealots, and Sadducees also all went extinct
Extinct.
back when the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple in 70 CE. Thus, the only sect of Second Temple Judaism that survived was that of
Pharisees.
Now, the New Testament does not have a lot of nice things to say about
Sure, it doesn't.
but the Jews
I read that book.
the Pharisees are actually our spiritual
Ancestors.
After the destruction of Jerusalem, they set up a school in the nearby town of Antioch, known to Christian sources as Jamnia, which is where they helped Judaism evolve from being a temple-based religion to one that focused mostly on community prayer and on studying the divine books of Moses, known as the Torah. The scholars at this theology school eventually became known as rabbis. Thus, Judaism, as it exists today, can more accurately be called
Rabbinic Judaism.
in order to distinguish it from the earlier Second Temple Judaism. One of the things that the early rabbis did was to develop the Talmud, which actually has two components. The Mishnah, which was written first, and the Gemara, which was written
Later.
commentary on the Mishnah. According to tradition, the Mishnah is based on the oral Torah, which consisted of various clarifications that were given to Moses around the same time as the written Torah. These were supposedly passed down by word of mouth until the time. However, according to modern critical scholarship, the oral Torah likely does not go all the way back to Moses, but
Which are people in the people in the New Testament. I have a video on that. I should link to that video as well. If you want to like that, watch that video. Link that video in the description as well.
Rather than being a list of clear-cut rules, the Talmud and the various notes that have with it are more like a collection of case law in which various opinions are given in addition to opinions about those opinions, and then opinions about the opinions about the opinions, which is why a typical Talmud page looks something like this. Now, it's at this point that I should bring up the Karaite Jews. Karaite Jews reject the Talmud, and therefore some people claim that the modern Karaites can trace their lineage all the way back to the Sadducees. But what's more likely is that they were simply a group
That's more likely, yeah.
from mainstream
Very true. He's nailing it on the head.
and even earlier groups
So complex.
that used to lose contact with rabbinic Judaism is Beta Israel, based in Ethiopia. They may go all the way back to the Second Temple times, but there is also evidence that they initially maintained some contact with the early rabbis, but then for some reason that contact was eventually severed. It wasn't actually until modern times that Beta Israel was quote-unquote discovered and integrated back into mainstream Judaism. So again, I wouldn't consider Beta Israel to be outside of rabbinic Judaism, but rather to be a mainstream thing. But then there's the Samaritans, who definitely are a separate group from rabbinic Jews. They claim to be the descendants of the northern 10 tribes of Israel. However, according to historians, the situation is much more complicated. When Assyria conquered Israel, some Israelites were carried away, and then non-Israelites were brought into prison. However, other Israelites simply moved south to Jerusalem, where they became integrated into the kingdom of Judah. Then, when the Babylonians conquered Judah, a split occurred, whereby many of the elites were carried off to Babylon, whereas the everyday people were left behind, where sometimes intermarried with foreigners. When the Judean elites returned to rebuild the Jerusalem temple, some of those who had been left behind, who the Bible calls the people of the land, wanted to build a separate temple, which they did at Mount
Gerizim.
territory where the
Charlie.
So to me, it's unclear whether the Samaritan Jewish division was more about an ethnic division or a class division.
Division.
What we do know is that the Samaritans eventually dwindled in size, and they consist of just 800. Okay, so let's now look at the new kind of rabbinic Judaism generally speaking, from 70 CE to around 1740 CE, there was nothing within Judaism that was anything like what the word
Denomination refers to Sephardic, Ashkenazi, and Mizrahi Jews.
very much in the north wherever they were. So when you're already a small persecuted group, you tend to stick together. However, it also boils down to the fact that Judaism, to this day, has no central leadership. If you're looking for an analogy from within the Christian framework, it would be best to say that Jews follow a congregational
That's true, they do.
sort of like the Baptists.
They like the Baptists too.
Trained at the rabbinical colleges, where some rabbis end up being more influential than others. But then each congregation gets to choose who they want to be their rabbi.
The rabbi.
And how they want to run things.
How they want to run.
But nowadays, some countries do have what's called a chief rabbi,
Rabbi.
which we'll get to later.
Get to it.
Now, don't get me wrong. When I say that there was just one Judaism until 1740, I'm not saying that there were absolutely no differences. In fact, there were. Which brings me to the term
Ashkenazi and Mizrahi. Sephardi Jews.
Not different denominations. They are more like regional
The subcultures.
To explain, let's bring up a map. Basically, all of Jerusalem, Jews came all over the region. One area where a lot of them ended up is in what we today call Spain and Portugal. Jews from this area became known as Sephardic Jews.
Sephardi.
Simply being the word for Spain.
Pretty much.
Centuries, they were Muslims, who generally treated them very well. However, following the Reconquista and the shift back to Christian
From
Jews
Iran as well.
from the Iberian Peninsula. And thus, many of them ended up back in the Middle East, where they were welcomed by the Ottoman Empire.
Next was Germany.
Or in the Low Countries, or in the so-called New World, where they settled long before the arrival of the now dominant Ashkenazi Jews. The word Ashkenazi comes from the name Ashkenaz, which
is a Bible character.
for Germany.
It's the Jewish name for Germany, yes.
We now know a lot about
This is the Jew.
They originated in Italy before next settling in Germany around the year 800.
From southern Italy they are.
Around just 350 people, which led to what's called a genetic bottleneck. Before this point, there was a good deal of intermarriage with non-Jews, particularly Southern Italians. But then, after this point, the group mostly intermarried amongst themselves, resulting in the creation of a distinct ethnic group called Ashkenazi Jewish, which has clear DNA markers that can show up on a DNA test. But take note, even though Ashkenazi Jews are at least partially European, a good amount of their DNA can still be traced all the way back to the Middle East, particularly along the Mediterranean line. So the old theory that the Ashkenazi are somehow fake Jews descended from the
Khazars.
who merely converted to Judaism
Jews
is
and
now known to be false.
those.
I should also
But they came
note
from
that while
Armenia,
the
they don't.
Ashkenazi Jews originally
It's those.
settled in Germany, most of them ended up being pushed into
Eastern Europe.
which is where most of them lived in the 20th century.
20th
Okay, so in addition to Sephardic Jews
Jews,
and
Ashkenazi Jews,
there are also
Israeli Jews.
which is sort of a
It's a casual term for those who never left the Middle East. Started customs, yeah.
Many Sephardic Jews ended up back in the Middle East. So take note that nowadays the Mizrahis are often lumped together with Sephardic Jews. But again, before I move on, I want to emphasize that the Sephardi versus Ashkenazi division has nothing to do with denomination, nor with any theological differences. In Judaism, we have a concept called Catholics use the Latin rite with those who use the Syriac rite. Their clothing and liturgy might be different, but their theology is not. To this day, Ashkenazi Jews rely heavily on philosophical works developed by Sephardi Jews, and vice versa. One good example is Maimonides, who I mentioned earlier as being the one who developed
Maimonides is a
faith.
Sephardi.
He was Sephardi, but he's just as
And Joseph Carr is Ashkenazi.
In contrast, there's Rashi, whose commentaries are included in
Rashi.
all modern editions of the Talmud. He was Ashkenazi, but he is also considered authoritative by Sephardi. Now, before I move on to the modern denominations of Judaism, I want to point out a book called
Shulchan Aruch.
written in 1565
Aruch.
by Sephardic rabbi Joseph Carr. It also contains notes by the Ashkenazi rabbi Moses Isserles. To this day, it's kind of the authoritative text for all things related to Jewish law. But it's important to note that it is used by both Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews, although when it comes to minhag or customs, Ashkenazis follow the rulings of Isserles, whereas Sephardis follow the rulings of Carr. Okay, so like I said, from 70 CE to around 1740 CE, there is pretty much just one Judaism, albeit with different customs depending on where you lived. But from 1740 onwards, this changed. Nowadays, it's said that Judaism
Has Reformed, Orthodox, and Conservative. Three branches, yeah. Research says that.
So before we continue down the tree, I want to explain the main differences between these three branches, or as I'm calling them here, denominations. At the end of the day, the difference boils down to just one thing, and one thing only. The code we call halakha. Orthodox Jews see halakha as the divine, and for the most part, continue. Finally, Jews are called not in order to obtain salvation, but simply because it says so. So Orthodox Jews follow the law very carefully, in the same way that it was followed for over 2,000 years. In contrast, conservative Jews, known as Mizorti Jews outside the
Mazorti, yeah.
see halakha as
Reminds me of a podcast I was
changing. In other words,
listening to,
law should evolve to
talking about that.
keep up with how human society has evolved. So, for example, Orthodox Jews won't drive a car on Shabbat because both Russian Jews and like religions involve lighting a fire. And in the Torah, lighting a fire is considered work, and you're not supposed to work on Shabbat. However, conservative Jews have come to the conclusion that in our modern world, being able to attend synagogues, which are often no longer is more important than following the original rule. So conservative rabbis have actually changed Jewish law to say that driving a car on Shabbat is permitted for this special circumstance. They have done similar things in terms of allowing women to become rabbis and supporting LGBT rabbis. Now, before we move on, let me mention the principle of Hifrach Nefesh, which is followed by every branch of Judaism. This law states that any other law can be broken in order to protect the well-being of the person. So, for example, if a person has an emergency, Orthodox Jews will drive the car in order to get that person to the hospital as fast as possible. However, there are three exceptions. You can't murder, you can't worship idols, and you can't sin. Okay, so finally, there are Reformed Jews. Reformed Jews see halakha as being neither binding nor unchanging. This means that each individual Jew can make up their own mind about how to follow Jewish law. So, for example, the Torah says that Jews must not eat certain shellfish, such as prawns, but it says that beef is okay. However, in today's world, due to climate change, it can be argued that eating beef is more problematic than prawns. So,
Yeah, it is.
Reform Jews might decide to adopt a full pescatarian diet for ethical reasons instead of following traditional kosher rules. A lot of Reform Jews like to focus on the phrase tikkun olam, which means repairing
preparing the
and tend to prioritize ethical
mitzvot over
rituals.
ritual mitzvot.
Now, these may seem like some pretty big differences, but surprisingly,
Mitzvah means plural.
these three groups can often look almost the same. The one exception to this is a subset of Orthodox Jews known as Haredi or ultra Orthodox. Although note that the term ultra Orthodox is usually considered offensive. Haredi Jews can be broken down further into Hasidic and non-Hasidic. I'll explain Hasidic Judaism in more detail in a moment, but for now, note that these are the Jews that tend to be Jewish in their lifestyle ways. They are the ones with big black hats and
Like the Amish. They like the Amish paradise.
picture of what a Jew looks like. We'll tend to think of a Hasidic Jew.
Yeah, which is what the Amish are in Christianity.
Because that's what the Jews, so we can all Christians, look like this.
It's the Amish paradise.
There are many who don't really stand out as being Jewish in an peaceful way and are more integrated into the greater society. These non-Haredi Orthodox Jews are usually called modern Orthodox. Okay, so how did all these various denominations of modern Judaism come about? Well, let's actually start with Hasidism. It was founded by the Baal
Shem Tov.
who lived in what is today Ukraine during the 1700s, which is why I've shown the Hasidic movement as stemming from the Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi.
However, take note that nowadays some parties have also adopted Hasidism.
Exactly.
What a lot of
Things change.
about Hasidism is that it was actually a very mystical version of Judaism. In addition to being outwardly conservative, it relies heavily on Kabbalah, which is a mystical school of thought within Judaism that goes back to Isaac Luria.
Reminds me of my video on Western esotericism. Isaac Luria. They're all scholars and rabbis.
So take, for example, Chabad, which is one of the largest and most well-known Hasidic groups. It was originally based in a Russian village called Lubavitch, which is why followers of Chabad are also known as
Lubavitches, yeah.
The central leader of this group,
Yes, and
was a descendant of
Zalman.
founder of Chabad. However, not all Ashkenazi Jews
Uh,
embraced Hasidism. Those who did not became known as
Belgium.
meaning opponents,
It
although
burns.
later become known as Litvaks,
Yeah.
because a lot of them were based in
Lithuania.
Around the year 1770, another major event occurred, mostly among the mid-Macedonians, known as the Classical or Jewish Enlightenment. It stemmed from and was very similar to the general age of enlightenment that had occurred in Europe about a century earlier. Basically, it led to Judaism being re-examined using the lens of modern critical scholarship. But it was not all simply about new ideas. It was also about new freedoms. Around the same time as Jewish emancipation was achieved throughout most of Europe, meaning that for the first time, Jews were given the same legal rights as Christians. At this point, some Jews simply became secular, whereas other Jews
Some Jews did become secular, yeah.
sought to learn more in order to bring it up to speed with what had been learned through science and textual criticism. Now, for the next little while, I'm going to be talking exclusively about the United States. That's because, other than Israel, this is where most of the world's Jews currently live. But don't worry, once I'm done, I will be talking about Israel and other countries as well. Note that it's mostly in the US and in some similar countries like Canada and the UK that Judaism can be divided into
Canada, yeah, Jews are found in America, USA, Canada, the UK, and Israel is where Jews are.
most Jews in America
Like some from a show I watched
assume most Jews
called The Big Bang Theory.
were not only
Howard Wolowitz.
but they were also leaning towards reform. So in 1873, the Union of American Hebrew Congregations was established in order to serve as the main organization for American Jews. This was followed by the founding of Hebrew Union College in 1875 as the main benefit. However, while most American Jews were Reformed at this point,
They were found,
were
yeah.
not. Therefore, in 1886, some more conservative-leaning rabbis broke away from Hebrew Union College and established instead the Jewish Theological Seminary. Although, please note that these so-called conservative Jews were only conservative in comparison to Reform Jews. In the eyes of many Eastern European Jews, these so-called conservatives were actually quite liberal. What happened next was that many of those Eastern European Jews ended up migrating to the U.S. between 1880 to 1925 due to persecution in Russia. They were even more conservative than the conservatives, and thus became known as Orthodox. Therefore, we ended up with three main denominations or branches within American Judaism. The Union of American Hebrew Congregations ended up being the main organization for Reform Jews, eventually changing its name to the Union for Reform Judaism, the United Synagogue of America.
Very interesting flag. Very interesting denomination.
Organization for Conservative Jews, although it too later changed its name to the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. Finally, the Orthodox Union, established in 1898, became the main organization for modern Orthodox Jews. Now, even if you've never heard of any of these organizations, you've probably seen this on it means that the Union,
Not sure I have, I probably have. Very interesting.
which is another Orthodox separate from the Orthodox Union. It consists mostly of Haredi congregations, both non-Hasidic and Hasidic. Chabad is non-member. Altogether, among those who attend synagogue in the U.S., approximately 50% are Reform.
Which is reminds me of another movie, Reconstruction Judaism. It reminds me of the I don't know if you're on Netflix here, series of unfortunate events. Netflix series where Karen Olaf, the dad of the adopted wife or adopted dad of, was in school. He said it was Reconstruction Judaism. So it was a Reconstruction Judaism in the movie.
As being somewhat conservative on the outside, but very liberal on the inside. There's also renewal,
Reconstruction Judaism.
which is even more recent, having its roots in liberal branch of Judaism, but it tends to incorporate more mystical elements from Hasidic Judaism, which is why its followers are sometimes nicknamed hippie Jews. Now, one other thing I should make clear is that in Judaism, denominational lines can be quite blurry, especially in areas where there aren't many Jews. So, for example, I live in Canada.
He lives in Canada, I didn't know that. Now I do. He lives in Vancouver, I guess.
One of the teachers was a Reconstructionist. However, after
Canada,
study
it's a Reconstruction Jew.
D, I had a Hakkapat down grit performed by an Orthodox rabbi and was immersed in a mikvah at the Orthodox synagogue. On top of this, the synagogue that my wife and I are most likely to attend, simply because it's the closest one to our home, is actually Renewal.
Renewal.
People ask me which branch of Judaism
Progressive Jew.
I belong to.
It's what Canada was.
I usually just say that I'm a progressive Jew, which basically encompasses everything other than Orthodox, and in America at least, is the dominant type of Judaism. But even between progressive Jews and Orthodox Jews, there is often a lot of mixing. While each set of rabbis might hold very different views, the actual members might not. So it's not unusual for a Jew with Reform leanings to attend an Orthodox synagogue, or a really observant Orthodox Jew to attend a Reform synagogue. And then, of course, there are sometimes separate Sephardi congregations. They usually see themselves as being outside of the whole Reform, Conservative, Orthodox dichotomy. But then there's also individual Sephardic Jews who do see themselves as belonging to one of the three streams. So it's complicated. There are even humanist Jews who do not even believe in God.
They don't believe in God, even as the philosophical side of Judaism.
What about Messianic Jews? Well, Messianic Jews are really Christians. So I actually talked about them already on my series about Christian denominations. I'm interested to hear my take on them.
I'll be doing that in a future video.
Canada. In the UK, there are actually two major reform denominations: liberal Judaism and the movement for Reform Judaism. However, recently, in April 2023, they announced their intention to merge into a single organization. They also have a chief rabbi for their Orthodox Jews, who you might have seen in the news recently as he participated in the coronation of King Charles III. Let's now look at how Judaism works in Israel, which now has a Jewish population that has surpassed
Incarnation of King Charles V of liberal Judaism, UK.
do exist in Israel in small numbers. The Reformed Conservative Orthodox dichotomy is far less important than instead, in Israel, Jews are usually classified into four main categories. First, there are the Colonial. These are secular Jews, and they actually make up a full half of all the Jews in Israel. Next are the Exhorted, who are traditional, meaning that they are only partially observant. They make up another quarter of the Israeli population. The final quarter consists of the Dati and Haredi. These are the fully observant Jews, with the Haredi, like we discussed earlier, being the most strictly observant. Now, I'm not going to address Zionism because Zionism is more of a political.
It's a political group, yeah. It's not part of Judaism.
Across the world and across all denominations have
State of Israel.
views on Zionism and politics within Israel. So it's important to remember that just because someone is Jewish, that doesn't mean that they support
Very true.
the thing with the state.
Just because they're Jewish, they don't support the State of Israel. To me, it's true.
I want to make it clear that these are not four different denominations. For the most part, Israeli Jews are not really divided into denominations at all. Instead, anything to do with Jewish religious matters in Israel falls under the jurisdiction of the two chief rabbis, one of whom represents Ashkenazi Jews and the other who represents Sephardi Jews. This system is actually the one that is used in most countries. Some countries, such as France, have just one chief rabbi, whereas others, like Argentina, have two.
This is Muslim.
Like Judaism,
And this guy is Siyawish Rahman, who is the narrator for Useful Charts. Look, I'll show link his channel in there as well
the first thing I would like to address is that most religions
in a future video.
have their origins. Typically, there's one of their traditional accounts along with one of their academic accounts. For example, as Matt mentioned in his video on Judaism, while Jews believe their religion to have begun when Moses received the Torah, academic scholars believe it to have emerged out of a mix of ancient Israelite, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian religions. Similarly,
Pagan religions, yep. Christians. That's a Nazarene. That's what research says. I regret for God. Hijrah. It's an important part in the history of Muslims. Surahs. Yeah, it's another thing I know about Hinduism. It's another thing I know about Islam is that the Quran's got chapters called surahs, like Surah 140 something. Surah 140 Surah. Surah, I saw that on somewhere. That's really what they believe, and that's what they believe. It's a pretty creator too. I like this guy too. Sunnis and Shias. $18. Very true. They went up to Spain. Sooner the Prophet, his, his writings, his sayings, and the examples.
Let's first look at how the Sunnis answer this question. Again, to grossly oversimplify, the proto-Sunnis, who get their name from the Sunnah, believe that the examples of the Prophet can guide the believers along with the opinions and comments of learned men and occasionally women who came to be known as the ulama and who have spent considerable portions of their lives studying the Quran and the Sunnah. The ulama weren't exactly priests, but they were not that dissimilar to rabbis. In fact, a lot of Islamic jurisprudence has parallels with Jewish law.
Has powers in Jewish law of Islamic jurisprudence. That's what research says. Research says this.
While Sunni imams were respected as authorities in society is perhaps the biggest distinction between Sunnis and Shiites today. Both have their own chains of imams who are considered founders of their various schools of Islamic jurisprudence and interpretation of Islamic law as Sharia. Whatever it must be kept in mind that back in the day, this wasn't a binary division. Rather, it was more of a spectrum, but it could and it did mix elements with both. Let's look at Sunnis first. Sunnis make up roughly 90% of Islamic population, while Shia rests maybe on less than 1%. Among the Sunnis, there are four schools of jurisprudence or fiqh. These are the Hanafi, which is the largest and is most popular in Asia, Pakistan, Turkey, and parts of the Middle East. The Maliki, which is popular in Africa and previously was the dominant school in the Islamic State. Then the Shafi'i and Hanbali, both of which are located predominantly in the Middle East, with the Hanbali being dominant in Saudi Arabia. There used to be a third tradition in Saudi, which was incorporated into Spain in what was Hanafi, but it has since died out. But recently, with the Islamic revivalist movements, they started to become common. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, early on in its life, Islam came into contact with the Greeks and the Romans.
Way of thinking, yeah.
So there was a debate in the Islamic world about what way of thinking should we follow. Should we adhere rigidly to the Quran and Sunnah, or should a logical approach to rational thinking be developed for our worldview followers? This led to the creation of the schools of theology. The Hanbali are considered the traditionalists who stick to the Quran and Sunnah, while the Mu'tazilites are seen as those who follow reason and rational thinking in each word. The Ash'ari and the Maturidi are somewhere in between, although the division between the schools is like word in theory, form less than in practice. So, the Mutazilites, while claiming to be rationalists and progressive, were behind one of the biggest impositions in Islamic history. This imposition also stopped Islam from having something of a hope. A little bit about that imposition, which is called the Main. It will take the reign of Abbasid Khalid al-Ma'mun. The main question was about the nature of the Quran, whether it was created at the time of revelation to the Prophet or whether it had always existed. The implications of that were that the
True.
Quran had always existed since the beginning of time, that it is true for all
All
time, and
times.
its interpretations cannot change or be updated over time. However, if it was created at the time of revelation, then it meant the Quran applied only to that time, and its meaning can be changed according to the times. The Prophet believed in himself as being the Imam and having the power to define Islamic theology and jurisprudence rather than the thought of younger teenage men and women known as the ulama. The Mu'tazilites supported him, but
Valley School. Pretty much. What is that? This is the core dietary. Athletic school has material. I never knew about any of this in athletic school. Never knew anything about this about Islam. Very interesting. What it says on the research. Clear. Shah Wadelvi, he was a reformer.
imams, students, and Sunnah. Over time, his doctrine, known as Wahhabism, became dominant in Saudi Arabia. Wahhabis are often put in the same box as the Hadith or the Hindu. The two movements might have been inspired each other. They're both Layanatam, meaning they claim to not adhere to any Medieval school, but in fact, they do kind of adhere to the Hindu. They call themselves a Salafi movement which advocate for the return of Muslims to the ways of Islam, capitals, the first generation of Muslims. Wahhabis are a bit more fundamentalist, indeed, a bit more. Yani came from the followers of Shah Walillah along with the Deobandis, who followed Shah Walillah but also adhered to the Hanafi method. They, along with the Bareilwis, are the majority of Muslims in India and Pakistan. The Bareilwis are kind of Hanafis
This
mixed
was
with
Sufism.
Sufism. So while the Ahl Hadith, the Wahhabis, and the Deobandis don't like Sufism, the Bareilwis do. Kind of odd, actually. Speaking of the Sufis, we're not going to be talking about that in detail because they're very complex. Sufism is a mystic form of Islam. They have many orders and brotherhoods that
So they did.
religious traditions.
That's how
Some
you
are
want to vote.
Shia, some are Sunni, others are something in between. Then we have the Shias. We have another video on the lines of the Shia imams, so we should watch that one to get what exactly they're about. But anyhow, Shias believe in the inherent of imams and the descendants of the Prophet. While these imams were alive, they didn't need to form schools of jurisprudence the same way that Sunnis have to, but eventually they did as well. It's an interesting point of how flexible and quick
Very interesting.
Sharia is that
Very interesting.
the greatest Sunnis was the school of Imam Jafar Sadiq, divided into various Shias. Among the Shias, the main three subsects are the Zadis, who believe in the Imam Zad al-Khalid and believe that the Imam is also part of the Ummah. Their founder was the Imam. Then we have the Ismailis and the Tawars. The Tawars are the majority of Shias today, but not only in Egypt. Fourth, the Ismailis and the Tawars, who are also known as the Imamias, follow the teachings of Imam Jafar Sadiq. Generally speaking, the Shias do believe in the Sunnah of the Prophet as well, but they only take parts of the Sunnah that are narrated by companions of the Prophet, the These parts of the Sunnah are then interpreted by the Imams whose teachings are followed then by the Shias. There is also another
Well, the
subset,
Shias.
the Seveners, who are now
Extinct.
all three of
Seven
these
as well. A
Imams
lot of different
subsects were
branches.
fighting over the succession to Imam Jafar Sadiq. I didn't watch the other video. The Ismailis were a much more active group in the 9th and 10th centuries. They formed their own caliphate in Egypt in 969 and considered their caliphs to be imams as well. As a result, their jurisprudence also has teachings from the Prophet and Imams along with those of Imam Jafar. It became further divided into succession. However, some groups of Ismailis who rejected the Ottoman Caliphate and formed their own subsect.
Subsect.
All of these are now considered extinct.
Extinct.
The most popular are the Dervishes, who are universally reviled by Muslims since they have existed in Mecca
Omega.
for 30 years BC.
Right.
From the Fatimid
Truth. Then these rise. That
Their theology is quite secretive and unknown to most outsiders. One of the things they believe in is the worship of the soul. The Talmers became the dominant group in Iran during the Safavid Empire's reign. They themselves had a disagreement that led to what can be called their own methods, the Usuli and the Akhbari. The Akhbari formed the majority of the Talmud Shias and believed in only using the traditional teachings to form judgments, while the Usuli believed that reasoning can and should be used as well. One branch of the Talmers eventually became the Alawites, who live primarily in Syria and Turkey. They're not considered Muslim by most other sects of Islam. They're often confused with the Alawis, who are in a similar Islam disputed situation, but they're probably more of a Sufi order than Shias.
so
Finally, the Baha'ist and the Baha'i faiths also
Baha'is and Baha'is also come from come from come from the Muslims as well, and so does Sikhism as well, sort of. Do a video on that.
Jesus' return led to the event known as the Great Disappointment of the followers. However, some Baha'i believe that Christ did return in 1844 as Baha'u'llah. The Baha'i faith definitely himself not this figure who is to return, both Shias and Sunnis are defined.
That's the Islam eschatology.
Office is a member of the Baha'i faith. The third major sect of Islam is popularly known as the Kharijites. However, we've used the term Muhakkimah. Okay, I won't go into too much detail. You can check out my videos on Al-Muhakkimah, but there was a similar
We'll leave a link to that channel
Ali
in the description.
was the caliph and Muawiyah was the governor of Syria, who refused to recognize Ali as caliph. They went to war and faced each other in the Battle of Siffin, where there was so much bloodshed that the two sides agreed to arbitrate instead of fighting. Some of the people on Ali's side, which by the way was called Shia Ali, that's where the name Shia comes from, decided that this was wrong. They believed that Muawiyah had, by fighting the caliph, gone against Islam, so he must be fought until he was defeated. Arbitration, they said, was against the law of God. They left Ali's camp and formed a third side known as the Kharijites, for those who left. They were the very first actual division of the Muslim community. The Kharijites followed a very rigid and extreme interpretation of Islam and stuck to a our way or death approach. However, these days the Kharijites are said to be extinct, rather a more modern version of them called Ibadis can be found in countries like Oman. They prefer not to be called Kharijites and claim to have nothing to do with them, which is why they are shown here as having branched off from Muhakkimah rather than from each other. Muhakkimah is the term used for the people who left Islam. There were other offshoots of the Kharijites as well throughout history, but most of them have gone extinct over the centuries, and the Ibadis are pretty much the only major group of this branch left.
Sure.
That's the majority of the population.
Found in Iran, so the Muslims are in Iran
Call themselves Muslims
and Kenya.
Muslimhood is
Many others.
extremely disputed. The first are the Ahmadis. They were founded by a man named Mirza Ghulam Ahmad.
I mean, who was a
Almost all other groups are
religious Muslim religious
uplifting
caste leader
Ahmad on the level of
in India.
Muslims.
Mirza Ghulam Ahmad
Islam, Muhammad is the last prophet,
is the last one.
and
Yahweh is
prophet is going against the very
like Mirza Ghulam Ahmad the prophet. So,
this goes so far that I'm sure there will be people in the
Comments.
comments telling us that we shouldn't even
mention
mention
them.
Muslims at all because they're Muslim.
That's according to research.
Islam, founded by Wallace Clark Muhammad. The Nation of Islam is popular in the U.S., specifically among Americans. Like the Baha'i, the members of the Nation of Islam claim that the founder, Wallace Muhammad, was Mahdi.
Died in 1965.
Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace, took the nation of Islam, the direction of Islam. Eventually, he dissolved the old nation of Islam. However, Louis Farrakhan revived it, and so it still exists. Thanks for watching.
Anyway, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, watch our video, and subscribe to my channel. That was a very good video, good detailed brief breakdown of Hinduism and Buddhism and Muslim, about Louis Farrakhan reviving it, all these other things he said in the video. And I'll leave a link to the video. I'll leave a link of the video in the description, and so you watch it without my commentary, and a link to the Useful Charts channel. The link to the original channel in the description, along with the other channel on Kadima in the description. Anyway, you have a good day.